Now, in my case, I didn't necessarily bring in employees. I went a completely different route because I had done that team of 300 people and all the HR issues and people issues associated with it. When I first started Calahan Solutions, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with employee management. I was a little burned out. So I had to find a different way to bring in those skills, and I did a lot of outsourcing. In some instances, I had friends with skills that I asked them to help contribute to make me stronger. And then in other instances, as I grew and had a little bit more financial backing, then I started bringing in virtual experts that could help me in different areas. Sometimes I did training so that I could grow the skills myself. And other times I brought in experts and said, look, this is something I really shouldn't learn to do because I need to be growing my business versus learning how to do this piece of it. And so I brought in experts to help me do those things. And that takes some humbling to do, but was really critical in me being able to get Calahan Solutions going. And still does today.
Oh, I'm sure. I think, like you said, that is probably one of the most difficult things to accept. It's very humbling, as you said, to admit to the fact that you can't do everything. And it's also making wise decisions about, well, yes, I probably could learn how to do that, but should I?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I love that. And it's true that you've got to get to the point where you're willing to outsource. There are plenty of people out there, and I talk a lot about putting a value on your time, and is it worthwhile for you to learn how to do something, when you're looking at how much time you would invest and how much time away from revenue generating activities you're spending versus hiring somebody who could probably get it done in a fraction of the time, and you could be moving forward. So
getting it done in a fraction of the time, and in many instances better than what you may do otherwise. I had a double major in college. One of them was in human resources and one was in computer science. So for me, doing new technical things is fun. It's like a toy to learn new programming languages and that type of thing. But I had to look at it and say, sure, I could learn how to program in PHP and do something on my website with a form, but should I be taking the time to do that? Or should I be taking the time to develop a new program that I can sell? I can write the specifications for a programmer to do that and be done in a fraction of the time with fewer errors because I would have had to learn how to do it and stumble through it initially.
Right. Definitely. And like you said, especially when it's something that you enjoy and you think, oh, that'd be fun, that'd be an adventure. Right. It's kind of hard to push it off on somebody else, but very good illustration there, and something that I think whenever we make a decision about moving our business ahead, we need to weigh that cost benefit and determine what's the smartest decision with regard to my bottom line, because we're all in business to make the money. So.
Right, and the other piece is to let some of the emotion go from it. I know we're all women that you talk to, and emotion plays a game for a lot of us, Yeah, just a little bit. And so the other thing to consider when you're looking at delegating things out, and I know you talk about this a lot too, is just because, I'll go to the flip side of that. Just because you don't like to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't delegate it out. A lot of people will start feeling guilty. Well, gosh, that's something I don't want to do, so I really don't want to give it to somebody else. What's really important to recognize is that different people have different interests. So just because you don't like to do it doesn't mean you can't find somebody that thinks it's the most fun thing in the world. Because I'm sure that as I sat here talking about learning how to code in PHP, there are people listening to this interview going, why would you want to do that?
Right.
There's different interests throughout the world. So you find people with the right skills that are just thrilled to be doing it for you, and don't feel guilty about it. Give it to them, let them do that, and that helps to grow your business.
Absolutely, and there are just too many sites out there where you can actually tap into other people's talents. So right. it's a no-brainer nowadays. You can, as you said, you can reach out across the globe and find somebody who has a specialty.
Absolutely, it's a lot easier today than it used to be.
much, much. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about the very best decision that you've made in your business, and why has it been so pivotal for you?
I think the best decision that I made when I first started my business was actually a personal decision that tied to my business model. One of the best decisions I made was to sit down and actually identify what I wanted my life to look like. What did I want my working hours to look like? What did I want my personal life to look like? At the time, I had a stepson and a newborn baby. A stepson that was 8.5 and a newborn baby, and my husband. And I told you I had been working 80 to 90 hours a week on a regular basis. And I could have taken that exact same pattern and just dove right back into it, only in a different venue with Calahan Solutions. But I would have had the same work-life happiness issues as well. And so one of the best things I did was just literally sit down and start defining things. And I involved my husband. And I'm glad I did that, because now I have a lot of clients that either are working with their spouse or they've started their own business, but their spouse really doesn't get what they're trying to do. And by having that upfront conversation with my husband to say, here's the vision, do you buy into this vision? And here's what I'm going to need from you, because I walked away from a high 6-figure salary when I walked away from that corporate job. And starting Calahan Solutions, I wasn't seeing that when I was first starting. So there was a financial risk that I was asking my husband to take. There was an emotional risk. We actually moved from Chicago down to Central Illinois, so we made a lot of changes all at once. But one of the best things we did is we outlined it. Here's our vision, here's what we're looking towards, and here's what we're trying to build. And then with that framework from a personal side, then I came and looked at the company as a whole and said, okay, how can I build a company that's going to deliver fantastic service, that's going to change people's lives, because that was important to me. Change people's lives in a good way.
Right.
And still maintain that personal vision that we had put in place. And by doing that thinking work and that homework ahead of time, it made sure, one, that my workaholic tendencies were kept in check. And it also made sure that I was really focusing on the things that were truly priority, because that vision was priority number one. So that allowed me some framework to be able to make good choices. And I continue to use that framework today.
That's excellent and so important. And, I don't understand why when people start, they don't take the time to really map out exactly what they want. They'll jump in with both feet and, maybe have a business plan, but have they really sat down, as you did, with, their spouse, their family, whoever's involved, and said, this is what I want to do. Can we all do this together? Can we make this, a supportive team, rah-rah, let's go together environment, and really get what you want out of it? And if you don't stop and ask yourself, what do I want, you're not going to actually ever achieve it. So taking that time.
I think it was critical that I talked with my husband too. Recently, it's interesting, I've had a lot of clients that are in that 1.5 to 3 year business line where they've happened to hit a wall. Some of the walls are good and some of the walls weren't so good, just in terms of growth of their business. But they've also hit a wall with their spouse's patience level. And in every conversation I've had with those clients, I've asked, have you ever sat down with your spouse? Does your spouse have the same vision? And we've actually done some spouse conversations with some of those clients and found that the spouse really didn't understand the vision. And I think sometimes when you're coming from a situation where you've been an employee and you go to work 9 to 5 and you bring home a regular paycheck, that job may or may not have a direct impact on your significant other. When you start a business, if you have someone that you're sharing your life with, then it's going to impact them. And I think sometimes it's not a matter of ignoring it, it's a matter of not even knowing that that's a conversation that maybe should be had.
Right. And you've got to have everybody on board, even if it's extended family who you need to rely on for support. You've got to have them on board.
Absolutely.
They've got to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and why. And if they're not going to be supportive of you, then find people who will be.
Well, and you know what? That's a really great point, because when I first started Calahan Solutions, I'm fortunate that I had my husband on my side. If I look at the history, I kind of laugh. Both my brothers and my parents all told me I was crazy. They thought I had absolutely lost my mind, because I was walking away from a high six-figure pay. I was walking away from guaranteed work. I was walking away from phenomenal benefits and client travel, and they saw my life as kind of not exotic, but just exciting, because I was traveling all the time and going to client places and doing new things, and I was looking at that and saying, I have no life. They viewed it in a very different way, and so they verbally told me multiple times, you'll never have people hire you for this, and what are you doing? You're crazy, and all of those negative words that kind of came in. And I'd say, by having that vision outlined, and I did research on the industry, I didn't just jump in. By having that vision in place, it helped me keep myself protected against some of that negative stuff that was coming my way too. And actually, just a year or so ago, I said, you know what? You did it. I really don't see how you get clients, but you do. And the funny thing is, and the reason they're normally a very supportive family, but I come from an organized and productive family. We're wired that way generally. And so they aren't my ideal client.
Right.
They would not be the type of people that would hire for the services that I have. And so I had to recognize that in order to get past some of the stuff that they were thinking and saying initially.
That's a very good point. One actually that I hadn't thought about, but it's the way people perceive what it is you're doing, and if it isn't something that they have need for, I can completely understand how they wouldn't grasp the importance of it or the value of it. So,
right.
Very interesting. I like that. So, Stephanie, what is the main focus of your business as far as working with a client? We've heard a lot about some of the things you do, but if a client comes to you, where exactly do you start?
Well, we start with what I call our laser-focused strategy session. Because I mentioned earlier, we don't do cookie-cutter solutions, and people come to us with a lot of different types of challenges. So it could be around their time, it could be around their space, it could be around their business process flow. It could be, I had one client that I started working with a couple months ago that the initial conversation was, stuff just isn't right. And we had to do a lot of digging to define what that was. But he knew that something wasn't working, but he couldn't go further. He just didn't know. Something just wasn't right. So we start with a telephone conversation, and we start unearthing what those opportunities are. And then I have a very straightforward conversation to say, well, here's how we could help you. And in some instances, the challenges they have, really productivity isn't necessarily the first issue. There could be other things that are higher priority, and I am very transparent in saying, I'd love to help you with these particular things, but based on our conversation today, really X is more important for you to focus on right now based on our conversation, and here's a resource for you to do that. And once you get that under control, then let's come back and work on these things. So it seems kind of funny to say that sometimes I might put off a client, but my intention is that everything be in an order that's going to help my prospect or my client be the most successful they can possibly be. And in some instances, starting with us is the right choice, and in some instances, maybe working on some other things is important first. So we start with that strategy conversation, and we identify a plan.